Hello there, I'm the Sleepy Chemist and I'll be here to help you today. I know you use this video to fall asleep, so before that, like the video and subscribe to the channel. Also, where are you from and what time are you watching? You rest with the pillow cupping your head like the gentle curvature of a moonlit dune. And in the hush between heartbeat and breath, you imagine a square of dark chocolate settling on your tongue. It is small, hardly more than a sigh of cocoa and sugar, yet its arrival feels like a door opening onto candlelit halls you have walked since childhood. Your taste buds, tiny hillocks on a warm plain, bloom with receptors that reach for the incoming sweetness the way nocturnal flowers open for unseen moths. You do not command them, they simply awaken, as if responding to an ancient lullaby written in molecules. Yet alongside that square of solace hovers another vision, so thin it is nearly transparent, so lethal it needs no bitterness to declare itself. Hydrogen cyanide, a molecule of only 3 atoms bound in a straight, unassuming rod, waits like an unsheathed needle. You picture it drifting at the edge of a distant almond orchard, disguised in the gentle perfume of blossoms, almost fragrant enough to fool a spring breeze. Even imagined, its presence sharpens your awareness of each breath you take now, safe in cotton stillness. Your mouth waters, rolling the chocolate into a velvet puddle that coats each papilla like dusk, spilling across low hills. Saliva is more than moisture. It is an elixir laced with amylase enzymes, sodium ions and mucins that choreograph a slow dissolving. Under this gentle flood, the crystalline matrix of cocoa butter unbuttons itself, releasing theobromine, caffeine's quieter sibling, alongside phenethylamine, that shy messenger sometimes nicknamed the molecule of love. Together they slip through cell membranes with quiet permission, promising calm alertness rather than wakeful edge. Around the chocolate, other flavors swirl, vanillin from a cured orchid pod, traces of maltol from roasted sugars, faint ghosts of jasmine and blackberry conjured by pyrazines born in the roaster's heat. These aromatic wisps drift through your retronasal passage, brushing the olfactory epithelium where millions of cilia quiver like grass in wind. Each odorant molecule, by virtue of slight bends and twists in its carbon skeleton, docks onto a receptor shaped precisely for it, triggering tiny cascades of ions. Between nose and mind, a tapestry unfurls, so vivid it feels like memory. Beneath this sensory opera, ions shuttle like lantern bearers across neuronal membranes. Voltage-gated channels open and close with the metered regularity of a monastery bell, letting sodium flood in, potassium rush out, calcium spark vesicles into releasing neurotransmitters across synapses measured in fractions of a micron. Action potentials link one another all the way to the gustatory cortex, where the signal becomes awareness. Chocolate. Safe. Again. But the same circuitry, tuned differently, can cry alarm should bitterness climb too high, should cyanide slip past taste. You consider the mitochondrion, a bean-shaped relic of ancient symbiosis curled in nearly all your cells. Once a free-living bacterium, it was recruited more than 1 billion years ago to become the firekeeper for complex life. Inside its folded membranes, sugars are broken, protons pumped, ATP spun like bright coins. Chocolate feeds these forges, cyanide quenches them. The difference is only a chemical handshake. Everything you have ever felt, every path you will dream, depends on that handshake proceeding undisturbed this night. Now the chocolate is gone, melted into nutritious darkness. Lingering theobromine hums along your bloodstream, slipping across the blood-brain barrier with casual grace. It nestles into adenosine receptors, that normally whisper fatigue, politely asking them to hush. The hush itself is gentle, softer than caffeine's trumpet call, granting you wakeful calm rather than stimulation. Ordinarily, that calm might lift your eyelids, but tonight your muscles surrender to linen's cradle, and the hush deepens into serenity. Imagine, though, that cyanide molecules rode the same bloodstream pathways, small enough to pass every porous boundary. They would intercept ferric ions in cytochrome complexes with the decisiveness of a lock click. Within moments, oxidative phosphorylation would stall, ATP production plummet, neuronal pumps falter. The first sensation would not be pain, but a vast, disquieting quiet. A stillness so complete it might resemble peace. Yet that peace is terminal, the hush of a theatre whose lights never return. Outside your window, the city exhales distant traffic, a low, oceanic hush masking the cosmic background radiation, whispering through every atom in your body. Carbon atoms in the chocolate and in the cyanide that might have been were forged in stars long dead. They drifted through interstellar clouds, joined a newborn sun, found root in soil, bean, bar, and now bloodstream. The itinerary of a single carbon spans aeons, yet its future tonight is intimate. To circle the citadel of your heart, to rise again with your breath, to exhale softly into the dark. You roll onto your side, pillow cool against your cheek, sensing papillae still tingling, ATP synthase turbines still spinning like water wheels under moonlit cascades. Each turbine, a macromolecular sculpture, welds ADP to phosphate 3 molecules per turn. Click, 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 like distant carriage wheels along a rail. Chocolate's sugars keep the wheels greased. Cyanide would jam the axle. Knowing this, you listen more closely and discern a hush of gratitude beneath the usual thud of pulse. Slowly your mind drifts to your own heart beating. 80 pulses a minute, governed by pacemaker cells in the sinoatrial node. Calcium streams in, potassium flows out, the membrane potential oscillates, and muscle fibers contract in synchronous wavefronts. Chocolate's mild stimulant may quicken that rhythm a beat or two. Cyanide would silence it. Yet here, now, the rhythm holds. Your chest rises and falls like a boat gently rocked by tide, and consciousness loosens its moorings. Warm heaviness spreads through your forearms, an invitation to let go. Dopamine, nudged upward by cocoflavonoids, drifts along the mesolimbic pathway, conferring a hush of reward. Your prefrontal cortex, busy all day with planning and critique, relaxes its stern grip. Beta waves recede, alpha rise like low tide, and the first shimmer of theta arcs across your inner sky. Somewhere in the hippocampus, new traces of memory lay down roots, pairing chocolate with safety, with bedtime, with tonight's hush. You breathe in through your nose, slow, deliberate. Air brushes olfactory endings again, but this time carries no scent, only the cool prickle of night. Oxygen molecules slip into alveoli, diffuse across surfactant-coated membranes into capillaries, hitch rides on hemoglobin. Each heme group, an iron cradled in a porphyrin ring, can bind oxygen, or, in darker tales, cyanide. Tonight hemoglobin is faithful, stoically delivering oxygen to every silent corner of you. Dreams begin to gather at the edge of consciousness. Corridors of colour, half-remembered voices, the swirl of warm cocoa in a porcelain cup. Your default mode network lights up, knitting disparate memories into narrative patches. Beneath those images run invariants, electrons tethered to nuclei by quantum fields, energies quantized, probabilities collapsed. Sleep does not suspend chemistry, it rearranges it. During slow wave cycles, your brain will rinse, repair, consolidate, but first a gate must drift ajar, and so you offer thanks to guardians seldom noticed, gustatory aversion, liver enzymes ready to conjugate toxins, medullary chemoreceptors that jolt breath if carbon dioxide creeps too high, the cough reflex, brown adipose tissue primed to burn triglycerides into warmth if chill should invade your sheets. Even the chocolate carries its defences, phenols that slow lipid oxidation, magnesium that steadies muscle. Cacao learned to arm its seeds against pests. You inherit that subtle charity. Your eyelids grow heavy at last. Behind them rods and cones take rest, for toxins bleaching back to baseline. The suprachiasmatic nucleus marks dimming light, prompting pineal glands to release melatonin. Molecules guide the circadian tide. Chocolate might delay the melatonin crest by minutes. Cyanide would end all crescendos. Yet that knowledge stirs no fear. Fragility ennobles experience, and tonight experience taste of velvet cocoa. Your lungs sigh. A final aroma lingers. Linen, toothpaste mint, the faint ozone of electric hush. And in that tapestry you catch, as if from far away, the barest almond note of cyanide, not present, merely imagined, its possibility framing gratitude's edge. Because danger exists, sweetness feels brighter. Around you, the room seems to listen, and you recognize that tasting is not confined to tongue or brain. It is communal, stored in tissues and memories. Keratin in your nails, borrowed amino acids from meals tinged with cocoa. Collagen in your skin owes some prolin to tropical beans. Even bone hydroxyapatite carries carbonate ions swapped for phosphate. A quiet record of dietary nuance. You are quite literally composed of past flavour. In contrast, cyanide leaves almost no archive. It arrives like a message in disappearing ink. Potent, immediate, soon self-erased. Your liver marshals Rodin's enzymes bolting sulfur onto cyanide to form safer thiocyanate, then sends it away in urine's silent convoy. But each rescue drains reserves, glutathione dips, sulfur amino acids reroute. Oxidative stress slips in like a pickpocket, proving that survival itself writes cost into the ledger. Yet vigilance is not fear. It is measured attention that lets relaxation deepen. So, as you lie there, feel gratitude for every unseen sentinel. The glossopharyngeal nerve ready to gag if bitterness surges. Carotid chemoreceptors ready to hasten breath if oxygen wanes. Ribcage muscles poised to cough away intrusive fumes. Their readiness lets your conscious mind soften, confident that the night watch is well kept. The assurance itself becomes a flavour, a subtle sweetness of safety. Somewhere outside, a lone leaf detaches from a balcony geranium, spiralling through warm air toward the pavement below. Its descent, though silent, is chemistry too. Cellulose fibres relaxing, water slipping away, pigments fading from chlorophyll green to dusky pheophytin. The leaf, like chocolate and like you, writes the next stanza of its matter. Molecules trade partners, energy drifts, entropy rises, yet brief islands of order bloom. Even falling, the leaf rehearses the same dance of bonds and bridges. Its whisper reaches you, coaxing dreams of green canopies under distant soft suns. And there, in the hush, carbon begins to dance a new pattern, extending four arms toward oxygen, hydrogen, nitrogen, inviting partnership. First bonds snap into place with a muted click, as if a key has found its lock. You sense the birth of a molecule not yet named, a bridge between delight and danger. The lattice beneath you pulses, signalling that the dance is about to change tempo. You pause, suspended in this molecular hush, listening for the first drumbeat of that change, and as your chest rises you taste anticipation on the back of your tongue. Sweet, bitter, indivisible. It is here, poised on the edge of carbon's next curious dance, that the night holds its breath. You lie suspended in that breathless pause, where time has loosened its grip, and chemistry begins to speak in rhythms your body understands before your mind can name them. The carbon atoms, those tiny black marbles in the architecture of all things alive and once alive, extend their arms again. You feel it, not in your hands, but somewhere deeper, where sensation hasn't yet been sorted into language. Carbon begins to dance. Carbon always has 4 arms, 4 places where it can reach out, hold on, bind. It is not the only atom that forms connections, but it is the most generous, the most versatile. It doesn't hoard its energy like helium, doesn't rattle apart like uranium. Carbon is the artist of chemistry, able to sketch endless portraits, rings, chains, spirals, stars. It forms the skeletons of sugars, the backbone of DNA, the branching fingers of fats, and even the simple rod of cyanide sharp as a matchstick. You marvel at its range, how one atom can make both a kiss and a kill, a cake and a coffin, a sigh of perfume and a choking silence. You imagine now a single carbon atom drifting alone in space, unanchored, undefined. And then a hydrogen approaches, and their electrons begin a quiet negotiation. They share delicately. One bond forms, a single whisper of agreement. Another carbon arrives, another bond, then an oxygen, greedy but elegant, pulling electrons toward itself like a tide draws back the sea. The carbon accepts this too, rearranging its own fields to allow oxygen its weight. Bonds shift, reshape, hold. In the dance of carbon, shape is function, and function is fate. Your body is full of these dances, millions upon millions of carbon atoms reaching and clasping and letting go. In the chocolate you tasted earlier, carbon joins with hydrogen and oxygen to form glucose, a molecule so central it is whispered about in nearly every cell. Glucose is fuel, but only because of the way carbon has chosen to link. 6 carbons in a ring, each holding hands with hydroxyl groups, form something the body can love and use. But change just one bond, flatten one corner, twist one connection, and the molecule may no longer fit. The sweetness might disappear, or the body might not recognize it at all. Cyanide is a different melody, still carbon, but in sharp contrast. A single carbon joined by a triple bond to nitrogen. A bond so tight, so fierce, it almost vibrates with tension. This bond is straight, rigid, silent. It doesn't meander like a sugar ring or open like a flower. It pierces. It bypasses sweetness, shape, permission. And yet, it too is made by carbon. You trace this contrast not with alarm but with wonder. The same atom, just dressed in a different arrangement, changes everything. You let your thoughts drift into your bloodstream, where carbon dioxide floats after a long journey. Each molecule once belonged to sugar. You picture the carbon having danced through your mitochondria, spun through citric acid cycles, released with a sigh of spent energy. Now it hitches a ride in your red blood cells, bound weakly to hemoglobin waiting to be exhaled. Carbon's exit is gentle, but its earlier journey, its time within you, was fierce and fleeting. Every thought you think tonight, every blink, every heartbeat, begins with the quiet cooperation of carbon's arms, holding others close just long enough to release their energy. Somewhere deep in your brain, carbon atoms help shape serotonin, a molecule built from tryptophan, an amino acid where carbon forms rings and branches and delicate bridges. That serotonin, nudged by the theobromine in chocolate, glows soft in your synapses tonight. It doesn't dance as fiercely as dopamine or burn like adrenaline. It glides. Carbon makes it possible. The carbon in chocolate's phenylethylamine, sometimes called the love molecule, reminds you that bonding, even molecularly, is about timing and proximity. In love, in chemistry, in life, it's not just about what's present, but how it connects. That idea rocks gently in your mind as if on a lullaby's tide. Chemistry is not just content, but choreography. Outside your window, a vine climbs the railing, its leaves folding slowly in the night air. That green, pliable motion is chemistry too. Carbon from the air, drawn into the leaf through stomata, now sits in starches stored for morning. Photosynthesis, the miracle where light teaches carbon to build again. The plant, through chlorophyll's green alchemy, transforms water and air into sugar, sending carbon off to form cell walls, roots, fruit, future. You realize now, without this leafy symphony, your chocolate bar would never have existed. The plant and the human are not separate. They're echoes, reflections. Carbon's choreography moves through both. You stretch slightly, comforted. You're not separate either. From the chocolate, from the cyanide, from the air you breathe, or the carbon cycling endlessly through leaf and lung and soil. You're one of carbon's latest expressions, a breathing sculpture made not of marble or clay, but of carbon-bound hydrogen and oxygen and nitrogen arranged into thoughts, dreams, hands, eyelids, sleep. Your bones, white and solid, are latticed with carbon-based collagen. Your hair, dark or silver or gold, is a braid of keratin, coiled from long chains of carbon in protein's intricate weave. Every enzyme flickering in your liver tonight, scanning for toxins or crafting hormones, is stitched together by carbon. And even in rest, your body is remaking itself, breaking and reforming millions of carbon bonds in every passing hour. It's not destruction, it's maintenance, like a weaver tightening the threads on a loom you didn't know you were lying on. You turn slightly, and the air shifts. Carbon dioxide lifts from your breath, joins the room, disperses. Somewhere, a houseplant stirs, pulling that carbon inward, preparing to turn your exhale into oxygen at dawn. The circle is never broken. Carbon doesn't die. It exchanges. It rotates. And yet, there is always a tension, a beauty, in knowing this versatile atom can build both balm and blade. That cyanide, for all its terror, is simply carbon held differently. That life and death are not opposites, but twins leaning against each other in the dark. That chemistry does not judge what it creates. In sleep's shallow drift, you consider the molecules in motion within you right now. Acetylcholine, a molecule with carbon at its heart, flickers at neuromuscular junctions, keeping your breathing even. Melatonin, another carbon-based wonder, slowly rises like tide in your blood, nudging you deeper into rest. And glutamate, the excitatory messenger, begins to fall quiet, carbon still coiled in its spine, silencing the chatter. You feel it now, carbon's quiet agency in everything that is warm, pulsing, living. Its four hands don't only build, sometimes they let go. Sometimes they form rings, sometimes chains, sometimes even cages. In cyanide's case, they form a straight line so clean it can interrupt the curved machinery of mitochondria. Yet that very same carbon, elsewhere, is bent into a ring and used to signal sweetness, memory, comfort. The key difference lies in how atoms embrace. You let that thought carry you, drift on it like a current. How strange that life's fullness, its richness, is built on such small decisions. One bond angled slightly this way, one electron shifted over. Chemistry is a language written in silence, and carbon is its most eloquent speaker. Now, without warning, you feel a soft shift, like something ancient leaning closer. A molecule is being built. A bond is about to break. Something new is beginning to form, and the carbon atoms are moving again. You follow carbon's rhythm, soft and spinning, until another figure begins to emerge on the molecular floor, where carbon reaches in many directions, curving, linking, weaving. Oxygen moves with more urgency, more pull. She enters every scene with gravity, like a flame leaning into the wick, like wind catching the corner of a page. Oxygen is a dancer of intensity, a breath that insists, a presence that transforms. Your next inhale draws her in again, though you do not command it. Your diaphragm falls like a gentle curtain lowering over a stage, and the air that floods your lungs carries oxygen in abundance. Not alone, she is never alone, but paired in O2, a duo so stable, so efficient, it slides unseen into your alveoli. Each pair of oxygen atoms travels together like sisters who know each other's every move, until, in the intimate red theatre of your bloodstream, they're gently ushered apart. Here, hemoglobin awaits. 4 folded protein chains cradle 4 iron atoms, and to each iron, 1 oxygen can cling. The moment of binding is swift but sacred. You can almost feel it. The iron changes colour, darkens, brightens, changes shape slightly, like an instrument tuned a half step higher. The blood that moves through you now, flushed with oxygen, becomes a caravan of promise, a river of permission. For where oxygen goes, energy can be released, and where energy is released, life, quiet, resilient, miraculous, unfolds. Think now of the chocolate you tasted earlier. That sweetness, that warmth, that silky darkness dissolving on your tongue. None of it would matter, would mean anything without oxygen. The sugars in chocolate are not energy in themselves, they are only potential. Stored suns, waiting. They need oxygen to burn softly, to be turned into the currency of life. Oxygen is the match, the spark, the allowing. Inside your cells, deep within the mitochondria where carbon's journey paused, oxygen awaits at the final station of the electron transport chain. All the electrons that travel down the gradient, from glucose through coenzymes to complexes, reach a point of release, and there, waiting with patience, oxygen accepts them. With grace, she takes them in. And as she does, she binds with hydrogen to form water, H2O. Simple, clear, essential. That single act, the gentle pairing of electrons and protons in her embrace, is the closing of the energetic loop. You realize now that water in your body is not just something you drink. It is something you make. Every breath, every heartbeat, every twitch of muscle and flicker of nerve produces a droplet, born of combustion so mild it's almost silent. Oxygen doesn't explode, she transforms. And in this nightly chemistry, she becomes not fire but glow, not destruction but renewal. But oxygen can turn too. She is no stranger to danger. You lie still, sensing how that same powerful pull, the one that makes her so good at taking electrons, can also make her too eager. When oxygen accepts 1 electron, not 2, she forms the superoxide radical, an unstable reactive species that tears through membranes and DNA like a blade through silk. This reactive oxygen species, or ROS, is dangerous in excess. It's the whispered edge of oxygen's double nature, helper and hazard, spark and scorch, friend and flame, and so your cells, ever watchful, balance her presence. They wrap her in antioxidants, vitamin C, glutathione, catalase, molecules that soften her sharp edges, that remind her to be kind. Chocolate in its darker, purer form brings these too. Flavanols that mop up stray radicals, that soothe her excited state. The molecules of joy come with guardians. Even chemistry is community. Now consider cyanide again, that thin, glinting ghost. Its cruelty lies in interruption. Cyanide does not harm by explosion, nor by burning. It harms by theft, by stealing oxygen's place. In the mitochondria, at the cytochrome C oxidase complex, oxygen normally waits to take the final electrons. Cyanide rushes in and binds instead. It occupies the site like a counterfeit key and locks the whole mechanism. The oxygen you inhale remains unused. floating useless in the blood. The machinery stalls. ATP is no longer made, and the cells, deprived of spark, begin to fade. This is what makes cyanide so fast, so quiet, so deadly. It doesn't stop the breath, but steals what breath is meant to do. A person poisoned may keep breathing for a time, their blood still rich in oxygen, red and misleading. But the oxygen goes nowhere. The fire is out. The illusion lingers. Yet here you are, breathing freely. Oxygen flows where it should. It nourishes your brain, lacing across neurons that now dim into sleep. It drifts through your heart muscle, keeping rhythm. It reaches your liver, helping enzymes fold and unfold their work. You're not stalled. You're a light, not ablaze, but glowing, steady, balanced. Outside your window you imagine a leaf. By day, it does the opposite, takes in carbon dioxide and gives off oxygen, a quiet generosity. Chloroplasts, like mitochondria's green cousins, absorb light and split water to free electrons. The oxygen they release is a byproduct, an offering. The oxygen in your blood now may have been exhaled by a tree or a fern or a seaweed frond drifting in the sunlit shallows of a distant ocean. The intimacy of breath is global. Your chest rises again, and with it, another pair of oxygen atoms descends into your lungs. They are drawn in not just by pressure, but by need. Your medulla senses carbon dioxide levels in the blood, the byproduct of all those mitochondrial fires. As CO2 rises, breath deepens, not for itself, but to bring in more oxygen to stoke the fires again. You are a self-regulating forest, where every exhale is compost and every inhale is spring. Even now, in sleep's descent, oxygen never stops. She does not dream, she does not slow. Her journey is constant, her loyalty unbroken. She enters through your nostrils, passes through branching bronchi like river deltas, then through capillaries no thicker than a hair. She hitches to hemoglobin, rides the blood's pulse, slips through interstitial fluid, and binds again in the cell's deepest chamber, then leaves, untroubled, as water, a transformation, not a departure. The beauty is that she asks for nothing but entry, and yet gives everything: alertness, movement, digestion, thought, laughter, and yes, taste. Chocolate's sweetness was only sweetness because your cells were ready to light it up. Without oxygen, chocolate would be dust. Without oxygen, theobromine would be inert. Without oxygen, the body would forget what joy feels like. You remember this, and it comforts you. That life is not only delicate but durable. That for every cyanide there is an oxygen. For every lock, a rightful key. For every harmful mimic, a true signal. And now, with your body wrapped in blankets and molecular grace, you feel it again. The molecules drifting, the balance being kept, the mitochondria quietly humming. You think of the word inspire, to breathe in, yes, but also to awaken, to kindle. Oxygen does both. She feeds your cells, and she feeds your spirit. You're not alone in the night. Your breath is a bond. There is still more to learn, to feel, to follow. Oxygen has carried you this far, but now your mind wanders back to the taste itself, the sweetness that sparked all of this. You recall how molecules can be identical in formula yet different in form, how one shape brings joy and another rejection. The story of flavor is not just what's present, but how it fits, not just the players, but the choreography. In the next breath, you sense a shift, a memory of something mirrored, twisted, just slightly off. Another molecule, another dance, this time sweetness itself in shape and perception. As you drift deeper into this quiet night, something waits just ahead. something familiar, yet not quite right. You drift into it slowly, as if the edges of your breath are brushing the contours of a new idea. The sweetness you tasted, the one that bloomed from the square of chocolate on your tongue, was more than sugar. It was a signal, a story, a shape. Not just a molecule, but a pattern that your body knew how to read. And now, as the warmth of oxygen still hums in your blood, you begin to sense the strange truth that sweetness itself is not a substance, but a recognition, a fit, a puzzle piece settling into a lock behind your tongue. In this soft world of sleepwood chemistry, imagine a molecule of glucose floating through your saliva. It approaches a receptor, one of thousands lining your taste buds, coiled like tiny locks waiting for keys. Glucose is small, with 6 carbon atoms, 12 hydrogens, and 6 oxygens arranged in a ring. But more important than what it's made of is how it twists through space. Its hydroxyl groups curl like petals, each angled just so, each ready to clasp a pocket in the taste receptor's surface. And when it fits, when it really fits, the receptor flexes open and sends a signal, whispering, "Sweet, safe, eat." Now float beside a different molecule, one with the exact same atoms, the same count, the same formula. Fructose. Its atoms are rearranged slightly. The ring bends in a new way. It too is sweet, but differently. It binds to the receptor with a touch more strength, triggers a signal with more intensity. Your brain registers it as more sweet, and yet it's the same stuff. Carbon, hydrogen, oxygen. The only difference is the way they've been sculpted, folded, mirrored. In chemistry, form is everything. You think now of enantiomers, mirror image molecules. Like left and right hands, they are the same in structure but reversed. If you hold your hands palm to palm, they match. But try to stack them directly, one atop the other, and something feels wrong. The thumb won't line up. The fingers splay in opposite directions. So too in molecular space. One enantiomer might smell like orange, the other like turpentine. One might soothe, the other poison. The body can tell the difference even if the eye cannot. Take limonene. Its right-handed version smells like bright citrus, like the sun held inside a peel. Its left-handed twin, pine needles, forest resin. The same atoms, the same bonds, but flipped. And your olfactory receptors, curled deep within your nasal cavity, know it instantly. They are tuned to shape, like instruments to tone. A fraction of a degree, a slight lean of an oxygen, can change perception completely. Back in your mouth, sugar molecules continue to glide across the receptor landscape. Some, like saccharin and aspartame, are artificial, shaped by human hands to mimic what glucose does naturally. They're larger, more complex, with long tails and rings that don't belong to nature's pantry. And yet, some of them fit. They fool the receptors, not because they contain sugar, but because they resemble it, like someone wearing a well-forged disguise. The receptor can't always tell. It opens, sends its signal, and the illusion is complete, sweet. But not all illusions are harmless. You recall earlier the shadow of cyanide, so small, so simple, yet so specific in its binding. It too wears a disguise. Its carbon-nitrogen triple bond is straight, stiff, no excess. It doesn't twist, doesn't flex, but it fits, too well, into the cytochrome C oxidase complex in your mitochondria. It binds in place of oxygen, like a false key that locks the door forever. A fatal mimicry. In that shape lies its danger. Not in bulk, but in exactness. The same rule, inverted, keeps you safe. Your liver, for instance, processes drugs and toxins using enzymes that depend on molecular fit. CYP450 enzymes, folded into gorgeous knots of protein, allow only the right molecules to enter. A twist too wide, a bend too narrow, and the molecule bounces off, unprocessed, rejected. The body is not perfect, but it is precise. Sweetness, then, is a kind of molecular kindness, the way a molecule curls into your receptors, just tightly enough, just warmly enough, to be received, accepted, adored. You think now of the first sweet thing you ever tasted. Perhaps milk, perhaps a ripe pear, perhaps a drop of syrup on a fingertip. That moment was chemistry too. A molecule found its way into a pocket, and the pocket sang. Even the bitterness you sometimes detect, dark chocolate's earthy edge or the tang of a raw almond, arises from shape. Molecules like caffeine or theobromine or amygdalin brush against bitter receptors, activating different locks. Those receptors are older, evolutionarily speaking. They're your sentinels guarding against danger. Bitter often meant poison. Bitter warned you. But chocolate walks that line. Some of its molecules bitter, others sweet. That's why it feels deep, complex, safe and wild at once. Shape matters not just in taste, but in life. DNA, your very blueprint, is a twisted ladder held together by base pairs that only match when the shapes align. Adenine with thymine, guanine with cytosine. A bulge, a mismatch, a kink in the twist, and the message is lost. But when everything fits, when the spiral holds, it replicates with grace, again and again, shaping who you are in a language made entirely of curves and locks. Your dreams are no different. As sleep deepens, neurotransmitters rise and fall in patterns shaped by molecular touch. Melatonin, the drowsy hormone, curls into its receptor in your suprachiasmatic nucleus, signaling that it is time to rest. Its shape is perfect. Its message is simple. Sleep. In this moment, as your muscles sink and your mind begins to float, you feel the quiet comfort of a body shaped by harmony. A body that recognizes sweetness because it remembers what fits. A body that knows the difference between friend and mimic, even without thinking. A body that responds not to ingredients, but to architecture. And as you drift deeper, there is a sense that something else waits, not just a flavor, but a deeper embrace. A chemical lullaby that speaks not only to your tongue, but to your whole nervous system. A set of molecules whose structure does more than signal taste. It alters your entire mood. You've already met one, theobromine, but it's time now to explore chocolate more completely, to understand why it comforts not just your mouth, but your mind, your breath, your blood. Something is melting, not just on your tongue, but around you. It melts, not just on your tongue now, but in memory, in sensation, in the very language your cells seem to speak without words. Chocolate, the smooth, silken cascade you once let rest on your palate, is no longer just a taste. It is a chemistry of comfort, a molecular lullaby. The warmth spreads gently, like the slow unfolding of a blanket across your shoulders. Inside that chocolate, real chocolate, dark and unhurried, lies a complex congregation of compounds, each one bearing a quiet purpose. You're no longer just a taster, you're a participant in the symphony. Your body responds as if remembering something it never forgot. The central note is theobromine. It is subtle, not loud like caffeine, but persistent. Structurally, it resembles its cousin, with a skeleton of carbon and nitrogen rings. But theobromine walks more softly, more slowly. It stimulates your nervous system without jarring it. Instead of rousing your mind into activity, it lifts the veil just enough to let your thoughts drift more vividly, more freely. It soothes the smooth muscles around your blood vessels, encouraging them to widen, inviting a softness into your circulation. Your heart may beat a little lighter, not faster, not louder, just easier. The name itself, theobromine, comes from theobroma, meaning food of the gods. And though the tongue may not know gods, it does know this. The way the molecule weaves through your bloodstream, it mimics the sensation of being safe. It is not just the flavour, it's the aftertaste that wraps around your nerves, telling your body you're allowed to rest now. Then there is phenylethylamine, a compound often called the love molecule. It flares briefly in your brain when you fall for someone, when you're laughing, when you're held. Its molecular structure allows it to whisper to your neurons, imitating the joyful chatter that romance brings. In chocolate, it exists in tiny amounts, not enough to make you giddy, but just enough to remind you, just enough to hum. It doesn't stay long in the bloodstream. Enzymes break it down almost immediately, but while it's there, it dances lightly, a flicker of joy passing through the folds of your frontal cortex. And deeper still, in the background, anandamide waits. Named after Ananda, the Sanskrit word for bliss, this neurotransmitter mirrors the body's own endocannabinoids. In chocolate, it appears not as a flood, but as a whisper, just enough to gently sway your mind toward peace. Anandamide binds to receptors in the brain that manage mood and pain, creating a sensation akin to quiet euphoria. It's not overwhelming, not wild, just serene. You feel it now, not as a thrill, but as a settling, a sigh from your nervous system. You may not be aware of the receptor it binds to, or the enzyme that degrades it, or the phospholipid precursor it emerged from. But your body knows. Your body remembers. Chocolate does not command it to be happy. It merely reminds it how. As you lie still, under covers, surrounded by the darkness that becomes softer each minute, you realize how much of this language is non-verbal. Molecules don't shout. They don't push or pull. They fit. They flow. They offer. The flavonoids in dark chocolate, for instance, do not feel like anything in particular, but they move through your endothelial cells, encouraging nitric oxide release. This, in turn, relaxes your blood vessels, improves circulation, lowers tension. You don't notice it with your mind, but your fingers know, your toes know. The warmth that trickles to the edge of your body is chemistry too, and then the sugars, those crystalline threads folded into the matrix of cocoa. Though not unique to chocolate, they are what bind memory to flavour. Sucrose, glucose, lactose, fructose, each a variation of carbon, hydrogen and oxygen twisted into sweetness. As you digest them, they trigger insulin. They spark dopamine. They tap into the pleasure circuitry that evolution carved to ensure you would seek out energy and remember the places where it once found you. You think now of the cacao bean itself, dried and fermented and roasted before it ever became chocolate. That journey, long, earthy, sun-touched, brings with it hundreds of aromatic compounds. Pyrazines, aldehydes, esters, ketones, all formed during Maillard reactions, those complex alchemical toasts between amino acids and sugars. That is why chocolate smells like warmth, like dusk, like the memory of a place you've never stood but always longed for. When the chocolate first melted on your tongue, it wasn't just flavour. It was a landscape, a geography of chemistry. Even the fats in cocoa butter, stearic acid, oleic acid, palmitic acid, carry purpose. Solid at room temperature but quick to melt at body heat, they create that iconic mouthfeel, first firm, then melting, then gone, like a snowflake landing on skin. The melting point is perfect, not too high, not too low. The sensation of chocolate dissolving is not just physical, it's timed to your temperature, your breath, your chemistry. It was made somehow to disappear into you, and still the molecules travel, past the taste buds, past the stomach, into the bloodstream, across the blood-brain barrier, some alert, some soothe, some protect. You may not feel each one, but their collective hum is what allows the stillness you feel now. Chocolate taken this way, in quiet and care, is not merely eaten, it is received. You think now of ancient rituals, how cacao was once consumed not as candy, but as medicine, as offering, as sacrament. The Maya and Aztec peoples brewed it with spice, with maize, with intention. They didn't sweeten it as we do now. They honoured it for its depth, its bitterness, its awakening. Even then, long before molecules were drawn in diagrams, there was a reverence for what this seed could do. Something known not by microscope but by marrow. And as you lie here, in the warm hush between thought and sleep, you begin to realize the comfort you feel is not random. It is not merely habit or indulgence. It is molecular. It is measurable. It is real. Stillness becomes softer. Your breath becomes deeper. Your mind less tethered. There's one more place this chocolate travels, and it's not in your blood. It's in memory. In the neurons of your hippocampus, where taste and recall intertwine, the molecules of chocolate lay down a mark. That warmth, that sweetness, that safety, it becomes a pathway. So next time you taste it, your body will remember this night, this peace, this breath. But the story is not yet finished, because for every comfort there is contrast. And as chocolate wins through your bloodstream in your sleep, another molecule waits in the shadow, cyanide, still small, still silent, still powerful, and entirely opposite. As chocolate opens and eases the pathways of life, cyanide is the molecule that closes them, that mimics, that steals, that stops. Its story is darker. But to understand sweetness fully, you must understand silence too. You lie quietly now, steeped in the molecular comfort of chocolate, your body gently cradled in the chemical hush it brings. But even in that calm, a shadow waits. Not cruel, not loud, but precise. You can feel it gathering at the edges of the sweetness, a counterbalance, a necessary truth. For every molecule that gives life, there is one that can take it, and among them, cyanide is the most elegant thief. It is not a monster. It is not even large. Hydrogen cyanide, HCN, is composed of just 3 atoms, 1 hydrogen, 1 carbon, 1 nitrogen. It is small enough to drift through the air, to slip through cell membranes, to evade most defenses. It is not bitter. It is not burning. It is the almond sweet breath of something ancient, and it does not ask before entering. In your body, at this very moment, lie tiny engines, mitochondria, tending to the fires of your life. Inside them, the electron transport chain hums like a series of pulleys and wheels, moving electrons from one station to the next, pumping protons, building a gradient like a battery charged by every breath you take. At the end of that chain, oxygen waits, ready to catch the final electron. The handoff is delicate, crucial, and this is where cyanide strikes. Cyanide binds to cytochrome C oxidase, the final enzyme in that mitochondrial chain. It does not scream or explode. It binds tightly in the same site where oxygen belongs. It fits just right, almost too right, and in doing so it blocks oxygen from completing its role. The electrons pile up behind the blockade, the proton pumps slow, a TP, energia pense, a behaja, a verese. Your cells are still intact, your lungs still pull in air, but the fire inside has been doused. Metabolism grinds to a halt. This is what makes cyanide terrifying. Not its aggression, but its silence. The body doesn't scream at first, it simply stops. The brain cells, the heart cells, the muscles, all begin to dim, like a city's lights fading block by block. Consciousness recedes. The system loses power, and yet cyanide is not foreign. It is not an alien invader. It exists in nature, in seeds, in leaves, in soil. It forms in the pits of apricots, in bitter almonds, in the roots of cassava. Plants craft it as a defense, a way to say don't eat me to the creatures who graze. The molecule is stored safely as amygdalin, a compound that only releases cyanide when digested and broken apart. It is chemistry locked in potential. You may have even tasted it. Briefly, unknowingly. A faint almond scent from a crushed cherry stone. A trace of sharpness in an undercooked bean. Your body has defenses. Enzymes like rhodinase in your liver take cyanide and transform it, adding sulfur to make thiocyanate, a much less dangerous form. This detoxification happens quickly, often quietly. Your body is vigilant. But like all systems, it has its limits, and that limit, when crossed, arrives fast. Picture someone exposed to concentrated hydrogen cyanide gas. Their cells, still full of glucose, still rich with oxygen, begin to falter. But the oxygen can no longer be used. It hangs in the blood like a promise unfulfilled. The skin may flush red, paradoxically rich with unused oxygen. The heart may race, the brain flicker, but it is a drowning, not in absence, but in uselessness, like trying to breathe through sealed lips, like trying to run with your shoelaces tied together. Yet here you are, alive, warm, steady. Not because cyanide isn't near, but because it is managed, kept at bay, monitored by centuries of evolutionary chemistry. Your cells know how to recognize it. Your mitochondria, vulnerable but watchful, are protected by layers of process. And even if exposed, your body has tools, sulfur donors, hydroxycobalamin, oxygen therapies, all designed to intercept, to reverse, to rescue. Chemistry, when it threatens, can also repair. Still, the thought lingers. How something so small can hold such power. This is not new. The history of humanity is tangled with cyanide. Ancient warriors poisoned weapons with extracts from toxic plants. Royal courts whispered of bitter draughts. In modern times, cyanide has touched medicine, mining, murder. It is used industrially to extract gold, to tan leather, to plate metals. A tool and a toxin, a compound that serves and slays. But molecules have no intent. Cyanide is not evil. It is merely precise. You reflect on this as your breath deepens. How easily molecules move between roles, friend to foe, flavor to fatal. How the same hands that reach for chocolate may also hold almonds, seeds, roots. It is context, not character, that defines danger. In your own body, small amounts of cyanide are produced naturally. In the metabolism of certain amino acids, in the breakdown of some medications, in the byproducts of smoke. And yet you survive. More than survive. You thrive. Because chemistry is not about avoiding danger. It is about balance. About thresholds. About thresholds. The dose, as always, makes the poison. You imagine a molecular scale. On one side, the soft curve of chocolate's theobromine. On the other, the needle-straight line of cyanide. Both small, both swift, but only one cradles your receptors gently. Only one offers sweetness. The other, sharp and still, waits for a doorway, a match, a chance. But in this moment, you are safe. The chocolate has passed. The enzymes are at work. Oxygen flows, mitochondria spin, and cyanide, though understood, remains theoretical. A ghost in the hallway, not a guest in the room. Understanding brings no fear, only respect. And as your eyes begin to flutter toward dreams, a question arises, not sharp, but quiet, curling around the last thought of the chapter. How do the mitochondria keep the fire alive? You've seen what snuffs it out. Now it is time to witness what feeds it. You've come this far through breath and bond, through sweetness and shadow. Chocolate has melted into your bloodstream. Cyanide has whispered from the edge of understanding. But now you turn inward again, deeper, quieter, toward the place where everything is made into energy. The mitochondrial flame, a secret that burns in nearly every cell of your body night and day, year after year without pause. And tonight, as sleep settles gently around you, you're finally close enough to feel it. The mitochondria, those small bean-shaped powerhouses, are so often described as factories, as if they clank and churn like machines in a warehouse. But they are not factories. They are fires. Tiny contained flames, passed from your mother's body to yours, curled deep within you like warm coals kept hidden beneath layers of skin and tissue. They do not shout their work. They hum. Each mitochondrion holds within it a complex structure, like the folds of a canyon called the cristae. Along those folds sit the protein complexes of the electron transport chain, arranged not in lines, but in waves, each one ready to hand off electrons like runners in a relay. These electrons don't just appear, they are pulled from food, glucose, fatty acids, amino acids, broken down gently through glycolysis and the citric acid cycle, their energy gathered in small chemical satchels called NADH and FADH2. These satchels carry the spark, the promise, and that spark is handed to the mitochondrial flame. Imagine it now. NADH approaches complex E, nestled in the inner mitochondrial membrane. It gives up its electron, and that electron travels, gliding down a slope of proteins, past like a glowing ember. With every step, a small pulse of energy is released, not to burn, but to pump. Protons are lifted from the mitochondrial matrix to the space between membranes, one, then another. A slow, steady gradient begins to build. This isn't fire in the way we think of fire. There are no flames licking the sides of your cells. This is controlled combustion, quiet oxidation, a current more than a blaze. It's the kind of fire you can sleep beside, low, stable, radiant. And when enough protons are gathered, when the gradient is tall and ready, they flow back through a beautiful spinning structure called ATP synthase. This is the turbine, the water wheel. It turns with the movement of the protons, and with every full spin, it binds together adenosine diphosphate, ADP, with inorganic phosphate, PI, creating a TP, adenosine triphosphate, the energy coin of life. It's a soft clink over and over again. Click, spin, bind, release. Your body's quiet currency, minted in the dark. Every heartbeat you've ever felt, every blink, every memory, every word you've read, every muscle relaxed in sleep has been powered by ATP made in your mitochondria. Thousands of them per cell, billions of ATP molecules per minute, all made from the food you eat, the air you breathe, and the fire you carry. The mitochondria are older than you, older than mammals, older than multicellular life. Once they were free-living bacteria, ancient, oxygen-loving organisms drifting through primordial seas. Then one day they were engulfed by a larger cell, not consumed, invited, a symbiosis, a partnership. The mitochondria offered energy, the cell offered shelter, and so began the quiet inheritance. Every human, every animal, every tree carries that ancient agreement, that original spark. You sense it now in your chest, not as heat, but as calm, as a body supported. The oxygen you breathed earlier has made it all the way here, to the end of the electron chain. And unlike in Cyanide's tale, tonight it finds its place. It binds, it accepts, it becomes water. The chain flows on, still, the flame must be protected. Mitochondria, while powerful, are delicate. The very electrons they pass can sometimes stray, leaking into the surrounding space, reacting with oxygen to create reactive oxygen species, ROS. These are the sparks that fly where they shouldn't. They can damage membranes, proteins, DNA. But your cells know this. They station guards, antioxidants all around. Glutathione, superoxide dismutase, catalase. They catch the stray sparks. They keep the flame safe. Even chocolate plays a role. The flavonoids it carries, like epicatechin, help mitochondria function more efficiently. They protect against oxidative stress. They improve the cell's resilience. That bite of chocolate, it turns out, fed your flame in more ways than you knew. But energy is not endless. Mitochondria wear down over time. They're constantly monitored, constantly renewed. Damaged ones are tagged, digested, replaced. The cell cannot afford a broken flame, and in some cells, like those in your brain, in your heart, mitochondria must be especially vigilant. These cells don't divide often. They live long, and so do their mitochondria. Every misstep matters. Every spark must be safe. You think now of sleep, and why your body asks for it. Mitochondria slow slightly at night when the body's at rest. The energy demand softens, and in that lull, maintenance begins. Damaged proteins are cleared, DNA is repaired. Ion gradients are recalibrated. It's not just rest, it's restoration. And here, wrapped in darkness, in stillness, your own flame flickers gently. It's not dimming, it's refining. Sleep is not absence, it's recalibration. Outside your window, stars burn their hydrogen into helium, nuclear fusion lighting galaxies. But inside you, carbon, oxygen, and hydrogen turn into ATP, molecular fusion fueling thought, breath, and dreaming. Both fires scale to their purpose, one to warm the cosmos, one to cradle a soul. You wonder what it would feel like to see your own mitochondria glowing, each one like a candle flame flickering deep inside your cells. What would you learn watching them dance? You might see which parts of you hunger most. Your brain, your heart, your hands. You might see the chocolate molecules spinning through complex 2. You might glimpse the elegance of balance, of just enough oxygen, just enough fuel, just enough protection. And then a question rises, gentle, curious, almost childlike. Who decides which molecules are allowed in? Who watches the gate? Because not every molecule that knocks is welcomed. Not every key fits the mitochondrial lock. Some are shaped for sabotage, others for sanctuary. And the ones that decide, the enzymes, the gentle gatekeepers, you've not yet met them fully, but you will. You left off at the threshold, the silent gate, the entry point, the decision that must be made with every molecule that draws near. Your mitochondria wait behind it, flame flickering steadily. The breath of life coaxed gently into motion by oxygen and glucose. But not everything is allowed to pass. Not every molecule that arrives at the cellular gates is meant to continue inward, and so, standing watch in every corner of your body, from blood to brain to the deepest folds of your intestine, are the quiet sentinels of biochemistry, enzymes. They do not wear armor, they do not shout orders, they do not sleep. They are shapeshifters, architects, gatekeepers, matchmakers, and their only power is shape, a precision of form so exact that they can recognize one molecule out of a million. Enzymes are not just catalysts, they are choices. They determine what reactions may occur and which pathways remain closed. And through these choices they guide the story your body tells itself, night after night, breath after breath. You picture now one such enzyme, perhaps hexokinase, the one that greets glucose at the cell's entrance. Glucose, the sweet product of your chocolate, drifts in from the bloodstream, full of promise, but too free, too mobile. It needs to be marked. And so hexokinase reaches for it, not roughly, but with exactitude, and donates a phosphate group, attaching it like a soft stamp of mine. Glucose is now glucose 6-phosphate, unable to exit the cell again. It has been welcomed, claimed. Its destiny has changed, and the journey inward begins. Every enzyme performs a variation on this gesture, binding, transforming, releasing, but only if the molecule fits. Each enzyme has a pocket, an active site, sculpted perfectly by amino acids folded into a precise three-dimensional structure. If the incoming molecule is shaped correctly, if its charges and angles align just so, the enzyme wraps around it like a closing palm. A subtle shift, induced fit, and the reaction begins. If it doesn't fit, the enzyme simply waits, still and patient, until the right partner arrives. You think of lactase, the enzyme that breaks down lactose, the sugar in milk, into glucose and galactose. In those without enough lactase, the molecule passes undigested into the gut, where bacteria feast upon it instead, creating discomfort, gas, pain. Not because the body is angry, simply because the gate was never opened. The enzyme was absent, the key never turned. In your liver, enzymes are working even now, long after your taste buds have finished their song. Cytochrome. P450s, a vast family of enzymes, process what arrives. Caffeine, theobromine, even trace toxins. They oxidize and reduce, they add hydroxyl groups, they make molecules more water-soluble or excretable. They are alchemists, transforming the foreign into the familiar, the dangerous into the discardable. But sometimes these enzymes are deceived. Sometimes a molecule like acetaminophen, when taken in too great a dose, overwhelms the usual pathways. Then a toxic intermediate is formed, NAPQI, which latches onto liver proteins and causes damage, unless another enzyme, glutathione S-transferase, can neutralize it in time. And so the balance is delicate. Enzymes are not limitless. They are fast, but they're not infinite. They require cofactors, coenzymes, substrates. They have their needs, and they're not always alone. Some enzymes work in elegant teams. The citric acid cycle, deep inside your mitochondria, is a dance of enzymes passing carbon fragments from one to the next. Citrate becomes isocitrate, then alpha-ketoglutarate, then succinyl-CoA. Each transformation aided by a specific enzyme, each step producing a molecule of NADH or FADH2, those energy carriers that go on to feed the flame. Without any one enzyme in this cycle, the dance halts, the flame falters, energy stalls. There are enzymes in your saliva, like amylase, which begin breaking starches into sugars even before you swallow. There are enzymes in your stomach, like pepsin, that unravel the tight coils of protein so they can be digested. There are enzymes in your tears, like lysozyme, that break down bacterial cell walls, protecting your eyes without your ever asking. Enzymes are everywhere, quietly solving the body's puzzles, one molecule at a time. But what's most extraordinary about enzymes is their grace. They don't force anything. They lower the energy needed for a reaction to occur. They make the improbable possible. Reactions that would take hours or days in a beaker happen in milliseconds inside your body, because the enzyme makes it easy, makes it kind. Even cyanide, for all its silence, is met with enzymes. Rhodanese, the enzyme that transforms cyanide into thiocyanate using sulfur, is one such rescuer. It does not shout. It acts. It recognizes the shape of the poison, binds to it, transfers the sulfur group and lets the danger pass harmlessly through the urine. Without Rhodanese, the flame would be lost. But your body has prepared. Even against the sharpest keys, it has built locks of compassion. As you lie deeper into the softness of the bed, into the slow current of your own blood, you sense them working, not as effort, but as harmony. Your enzymes are not separate from you. They are you, made of the same DNA, transcribed into proteins, folded by chaperones, sent to the right cell compartment like letters finding their addressees, and every single moment they are deciding this, yes, that, no, this may enter, that must go. Even in the quiet of night, enzymes tune your brain chemistry. They clear spent neurotransmitters. They rebalance ions. They nudge you from light sleep into deep. They prepare you to dream. You do not hear them, but you are alive because of them. And as this chapter closes, you begin to wonder if enzymes can open gates, if they can decide what enters and what stays behind. What happens once the message is received? Because taste is not just chemical, it is emotional. Once the sweetness reaches your brain, once the signals are lit, what does the brain do with it? The gate has opened. Now the message must be read. The gates have opened. The enzymes have spoken. Molecules have crossed thresholds in silence, passed from mouth to gut to blood to cell, transformed, absorbed, remembered. Now, what began on your tongue travels the last, most intimate path of all, into your brain. Taste, after all, does not end at the mouth. That's only the beginning. Sweetness, bitterness, salt, umami, they are detected at the surface, yes, but their meaning is decided far deeper, in the folds and tunnels of your brain's sensory cortex, in its limbic circuitry, in its memory pathways and ancient alert systems. You do not simply taste, you feel taste, and nowhere is that more true than with bitterness. Bitterness, the shape that warned your ancestors, the signal that told early mammals, this plant may harm you. It is not a flavor in the way sweetness is. Sweetness is invitation. Bitterness is caution. It activates regions in the brainstem and amygdala associated with vigilance, with hesitation, with pause. Even now, in your civilized sugar-salted world, a bitter taste causes your facial muscles to tighten, your brow to furrow, your throat to prepare. It is instinct, chemistry bound into emotion. Yet bitterness is not an enemy. Not always. In chocolate, for instance, it is part of the beauty. Theobromine and caffeine, the bitter alkaloids, are necessary to the flavor's complexity. Remove them, and chocolate becomes cloying, flat, forgettable. Bitterness gives it depth, a tether to the earth it came from. It reminds you that sweetness means more when it shares space with shadow. Your brain knows this, and not just intellectually. It knows it viscerally. The moment bitter molecules bind to their receptors, TAS2Rs, they send a signal not only through the cranial nerves toward the gustatory cortex, but also to the insula, the part of your brain that helps interpret taste alongside emotional context. The insula says, "This is bitter." But the orbitofrontal cortex, the seat of decision-making, responds, "Yes, but do we like it?" That answer is shaped by memory. Perhaps you remember your first dark chocolate. Perhaps it was too much. Perhaps it was thrilling. Over time, your brain learned to associate that bitter edge with comfort, with richness, with adultness. The same bitterness that might once have warned you away now draws you in. Your perception has shifted, not because the molecule changed, but because your brain did. This is neuroplasticity, the brain's ability to reshape how it responds, to edit its own expectations. Every time you encounter a taste, your brain updates its map. Each new bite is a whisper to your neurons, is this safe? Is this good? Is this home? With repeated exposure, a flavor once avoided may become beloved. Bitterness becomes elegance. Acidity becomes brightness. Pungency becomes pleasure. And all of this unfolds beneath the surface of consciousness. Neurotransmitters like dopamine and serotonin participate in these evaluations, not as arbiters of taste itself, but as markers of reward. When something is both safe and enjoyable, your brain rewards you, not just with pleasure, but with memory. The next time you taste it, the reward arrives even faster. The circuitry is faster, the signal stronger. This is how favorites are made. But bitterness retains its cautionary power. Even if you enjoy the sharp bite of espresso or the tang of grapefruit, a bitter compound you don't recognize will still raise alarm bells. That's because your brain's parabrachial nucleus, a key relay in the taste pathway, links taste signals directly to nausea centers and protective reflexes. It is always ready, always watching. The balance between pleasure and aversion is delicate. It is shaped not just by flavor, but by context, by smell, by expectation. In a cozy kitchen, a bitter sip of dark cocoa may feel luxurious. In a hospital bed, the same taste might trigger unease. Your brain ties taste to circumstance, layering meaning upon meaning. Now, drift deeper, into the limbic system, the ancient core of your brain where emotion and memory live side by side. Here, taste becomes story. The bitterness in chocolate is no longer a molecule, it is a feeling. It is the winter you curled on a couch with warm hands wrapped around a cup. It is the late-night square of chocolate after a long day. It is a gift, a ritual, a piece of language unspoken but never forgotten. The hippocampus, which helps form long-term memory, links these experiences together, and the amygdala, which processes emotion, tags them with meaning. A bitter flavor, once feared, becomes a signature of love if it was shared. A sharp taste can become sacred if it was once served with care. The molecules don't change, the brain does. And so, as you lie there now, eyes soft behind lids, your brain continues to map and remember. The bitterness from earlier, that slight edge beneath the sweetness of your chocolate, is still active in your neurons. Not as a threat, but as a texture, a shape your brain now recognizes as part of the larger story of pleasure earned, not given freely. Your insula continues to process. Your nucleus accumbens, part of the reward system, weighs the satisfaction. Your anterior cingulate cortex, which monitors conflict, notes that the bitterness was acceptable, maybe even welcome. The signal loop's complete, and the taste becomes part of you. And beneath it all, beneath the neurons and pathways, the molecules themselves are still traveling. Some bitter compounds may linger longer in the bloodstream, metabolize slowly. Some may affect neurotransmitter levels, subtly altering your sleep, your dreams. The brain is not a fixed landscape. It is water, responding to tides. You feel it now. The way chocolate doesn't just sit on your tongue, but echoes through your brain, touches your thoughts. The bitterness that once whispered caution now folds into comfort. Your brain has made peace with it, and because it has, you can rest more deeply. Still, there's more. Because beyond taste and reaction, there's intention. Why do plants make these molecules? Why does cacao produce theobromine? Why do apricot pits hold cyanide? These are not accidents. They are part of a greater chemistry, the kind shaped not just by atoms, but by evolution, by survival. You've followed the molecule into the brain. Now it's time to return to its root. What does nature want when it gives us these tastes? What is the reason for these gifts and these warnings? You've traveled inward, into your own cells, your own breath, your brain's quiet lattice of meaning. But now, gently, you begin to drift back outward, past the taste buds, past the bloodstream, back through the tongue and the mouth, beyond your skin. You move in reverse across time, across miles of root and stem and seed, until you find yourself beneath a wide green canopy. surrounded by a world that never speaks yet always knows. This is where it began. Not in a lab, not in your kitchen, but in the wisdom of plants, in the way they mix molecules not to please you, but to protect themselves. The cacao tree is here, standing still in the humid air. Its trunk is slim, its branches low and steady, bearing pods that pulse with colour, orange, crimson, gold. Inside those pods are seeds, cacao beans, bitter and hard, wrapped in sweet, slippery pulp. You might believe the sweetness is for you, but it isn't. It's for the monkeys and birds and creatures that feed on fruit and spread the seeds. The sweetness is a lure, a promise, but the bitterness in the seed, that is the warning, the boundary. It says, swallow the fruit if you must, but do not eat the future. Because theobromine, caffeine, tannins, all those bitter alkaloids in the seed are not designed to delight. They are defenses. Potent molecules evolved to deter fungi, insects, rodents. Bitterness is botanical armor. Over millions of years, plants have learned to speak a chemical language to their predators. Each molecule a word, each flavor a warning. Stay back. Spit it out. Don't try again. And it is not just cacao. Everywhere you look, plants are whispering these messages in molecules. The apricot pit conceals amygdalin, which your body can convert into cyanide. The cassava root must be soaked and dried to rid it of its glycosides. The leaves of the tomato plant contain solanine, the same bitter alkaloid found in nightshade. The smell of mint, the sting of mustard, the burn of pepper, none of them are accidents. They are strategies. They are protective potions. You lie in the hush of your bed, yet your mind now walks among forests and fields, along vine-wrapped edges and sunlit clearings where plants hold aloft their quiet chemistry. You understand now that taste, especially bitterness, is not a judgment. It is a signal, coded by evolution, passed from root to mouth to mind. And yet, humans did not turn away from bitterness. We leaned into it. We learned to roast, to ferment, to steep. We learned to tolerate and then to crave. Chocolate, tea, coffee, wine. Each began as something inedible, harsh, even toxic. But through care, through transformation, we shaped bitterness into beauty. We extracted pleasure from defense. It is a kind of alchemy, a kind of listening. You can imagine the first hands that cracked open a cacao pod, the first nose that wrinkled at the bitterness, the first fire that softened the seed's edge. The transformation was not only physical, it was relational. A partnership formed. The plant defended itself. The human respected the boundary. A new taste was born, and plants, in return, gave more than flavor. Many of their toxins, in small doses, proved medicinal. Salatin in willow bark became aspirin. Quinine in cinchona bark became malaria's remedy. Morphine, from the poppy, became pain's quieting hand. Even theobromine, once just a deterrent, found its way into the rhythm of your heart, the softness of your vessels, the calm alertness of your mind. Bitterness became balm. In the nighttime silence, you see now how plants are not passive. They are chemists of necessity. Every leaf, every root, every seed carries its own vocabulary. They cannot run, so they defend. They cannot bite, so they sting with alkaloids, with glycosides, with oils that blur eyes and choke mouths. But they also nourish, offer, heal. They are both garden and apothecary, and we, the guests, have learned to read their chemistry through taste. You remember the term phytochemicals, plant chemicals, not essential for your survival, yet often critical to your health. Flavonoids, polyphenols, lignans, terpenes, each one a brushstroke in the painting of your well-being. Some reduce inflammation, others support the immune system, some serve as antioxidants. Many do several things at once. Their structures so multifaceted they seem to play multiple instruments in your body's molecular orchestra. These compounds evolved to serve the plant. Their benefit to you is incidental and miraculous. It humbles you, doesn't it? To realize that the chocolate you tasted earlier was not crafted for your comfort. It was a plant survival strategy, repurposed by human hands, rewritten by culture, ritual, craving. The molecules that now lull you towards sleep were once weapons, and now, softened by time and fire, they rock you instead. And still, plants remain vigilant. Still, they craft new defenses as insects adapt, as fungi evolve. It is an arms race fought in silence, leaf by leaf, molecule by molecule. Each bitter edge a message, each fragrant burst a flag. And we, the wanderers, the harvesters, have been reading these messages long enough that our very biology has changed in return. You carry receptors shaped by this evolutionary conversation. Your TAS2R genes, responsible for bitter detection, vary between individuals. Some of us are more sensitive to bitterness than others. Some taste the pungency of brassica vegetables, like broccoli and kale, more strongly. Some recoil from coffee, others find comfort. Your body, even at the genetic level, reflects your ancestors' dialogue with plants. And yet, despite the warnings, you keep returning to the cup, to the plate, to the seed. You crave not only the sugar that masks bitterness, but the bitterness itself. It grounds you. It reminds you that pleasure must sometimes be earned. That flavor carries a history, that the plant gave a part of itself, not freely, not always safely, but with a kind of complex permission. You settle deeper into your pillow, aware now that every flavor has a lineage, every sensation a story. Even the danger, when understood, becomes part of the song. But one truth still lingers, quiet and clear. Not all plant potions are safe at every dose. Even chocolate has its limit. Even the safest bitterness can turn. How much is too much? How do we know when healing becomes harm? When delight crosses into danger? You've touched sweetness. You've learned bitterness. You've heard the voice of the plant. Now, to understand the true difference between medicine and poison, between welcome and warning, you must follow one final rule of nature. The dose makes the poison. You lie beneath the folds of darkness now, your breath deep and even, your body stilled by the alchemy of sweetness, bitterness, and sleep. But somewhere just beyond the peace, a truth circles slowly, steadily. An ancient law whispered by plants, remembered by healers, measured by chemists. It is not a warning nor a threat, but a simple balance. The dose makes the poison. You return to the image of the cacao pod, hanging in the humid air, its seeds filled with theobromine. You've learned how this alkaloid stimulates your mind, relaxes your vessels, lifts your mood, but it is not harmless. At a high enough dose, unreachable through taste alone, but possible with concentration, it becomes toxic. In dogs and cats whose enzymes differ from your own, it can be deadly. In humans, taken to excess, it can strain the heart, cause restlessness, nausea, tremors, and yet in small doses, it comforts. The difference is not the molecule, the difference is the amount, and this is true of nearly every substance. Water, so essential, becomes lethal when consumed in extreme quantities, diluting sodium in the blood until cells swell, nerves falter, the brain begins to drown within its own skull. Oxygen, too, your life's breath, can become dangerous under pressure. In diving, pure oxygen at depth can cause seizures. The very air you rely on must be regulated, balanced, respected. Even salt, a mineral your nerves require, can become poison if consumed without balance. The same sodium ions that let neurons fire and muscles contract can, in excess, tip the body's fluid balance, raise blood pressure, strain the heart. Again, the molecule has not changed, only the dose. In pharmacology, this is known as the therapeutic window, the range between an effective dose and a harmful one. A medicine must fall within this window to help. Too little, and it is inert. Too much, and it becomes toxic. Even something as ancient and trusted as aspirin, derived from the salicin in willow bark, can, in overdose, thin the blood too far, irritate the stomach lining, disrupt metabolism. The same compound that dulls pain can cause it, if unmeasured. You begin to see that this balance between healing and harm is not a flaw of the body, but a reflection of its complexity. The body is not a static machine. It is a river of reactions, always adjusting, always seeking equilibrium. What helps in one moment may hinder in another. What is needed during stress may be excessive in rest. The body's wisdom lies in its ability to tolerate, metabolize, buffer, to find the middle ground. Even chocolate, with all its gifts, is not exempt. The sugars it carries can soothe and uplift, but in excess they strain the pancreas, spike insulin, stir inflammation. Its fats, rich and comforting, can sustain you, but only in balance. The flavonoids, protective in moderation, can interfere with absorption of certain minerals if taken too frequently. The theobromine, helpful to your heart at low levels, may overstimulate when taken in bulk. And yet, none of this is a warning. It is a truth, a relationship, a call to awareness, not avoidance. Your liver, that great mediator of dose, works endlessly in your favor. It takes in the blood from your gut, filled with nutrients and chemicals, and processes each one, activating some, deactivating others. Enzymes there decide what is safe, what is waste, what must be stored or transformed or filtered out. It is not perfect, but it is precise, and it depends on time, on concentration, on repetition. A dose once is not the same as a dose daily. A teaspoon is not the same as a cup. Cyanide, that sharp, dangerous molecule you met before, obeys this same rule. In high doses, it blocks your cell's ability to use oxygen. But in trace amounts, the body can detoxify it. It is found in some foods, apple seeds, cassava, bitter almonds, always locked within larger molecules, released only when chewed or digested. And even then, your body handles it, neutralizes it, clears it. Dose is the deciding factor. Even your own neurotransmitters follow this law. Dopamine, the molecule of reward and motivation, must be present in balance. Too little, and you may feel flat, joyless, unmotivated. Too much, and the mind becomes erratic, impulsive, manic. Cortisol, your stress hormone, helps you wake, respond, focus. But in chronic excess, it wears the body down, inflames tissues, disrupts memory, sleep, immunity. Every signal your brain sends is governed by dose, by rhythm, by moderation. You begin to feel it now, in your own chest, a kind of peace that comes not from avoidance, but from understanding. Nothing in the world is purely safe. Nothing is purely harmful. It is your body's intelligence, your awareness, your rhythm that makes the difference. The poison is not in the thing. It is in the relationship. You think now of the old physicians, the herbalists and alchemists, the poets of medicine. They understood this balance. Paracelsus, the Renaissance physician, wrote the phrase that still echoes through every pharmacological textbook. All things are poison, and nothing is without poison. The dose makes the poison. He knew what we still strive to grasp, that healing and harm are neighbours, separated only by the door of measure. And so, as you lie in the stillness, your mind begins to reframe what it means to seek health. It is not to avoid everything that might cause harm. It is to understand it, to listen to the body's cues, to respect quantity, to live in dialogue, not in fear. Even your cravings, your preferences, your tolerances, they are shaped by this internal balancing act. Your desire for chocolate, for salt, for spice may reflect not weakness, but a whisper from your body. A little more of this, please, but just enough. Your cells remember, your enzymes measure, your brain listens, and somewhere in this wisdom lies your safety. This soft limit, the quiet line between delight and danger, the realization that joy, too, can come in doses, that even dreams must be measured lest they slip into chaos. You begin to feel a new question rising. If everything depends on dose, then how do we know when we've had enough? How does the body sense saturation, fullness, closure? Because balance, once reached, must be maintained. Something must keep the watch. There must be something within you that knows when to stop, when to exhale, when to let go. There must be something within you that knows when to stop. Something that stands at the edge of excess and murmurs, enough. Something ancient embedded in your blood and breath that recognizes when the dose turns from medicine to menace. And there is. Your body is not only a receiver of molecules, it is a maker of balance, a chemist of restoration. For every poison, it seeks an answer. For every wrong turn, it begins to mend. Tonight, beneath the quiet weight of sleep, you enter that realm of alchemy, the gentle art of undoing harm. Antidotes are not only vials in glass cabinets or potions from ancient apothecaries. They are principles first, molecular opposites, correctives, soothers, shields. Your own cells hold many of them, ready and waiting. The liver especially is an alchemical workshop. It transforms, neutralizes, conjugates. But the work is shared throughout your body. Even your breath is an antidote. When you exhale carbon dioxide, you maintain the pH of your blood, preventing acidity. When you inhale deeply after panic, oxygen floods back in, taming the body's alarms. Each breath is a small act of correction. Some antidotes work through binding. Think of activated charcoal, often used in poisonings. It doesn't destroy toxins, it holds them. Like a sponge, it traps them before they can enter the bloodstream. Other antidotes work by blocking receptors, keeping a poison from landing in its intended spot. Naloxone, for instance, competes with opioids in the brain, pushing them aside, waking the body from sedation. It doesn't erase the drug, it displaces it, gently but decisively. Then there are enzymatic antidotes, like rhodonese, which you've already met. This sulfur-donating enzyme transforms cyanide into thiocyanate, a form the kidneys can safely excrete. It doesn't fight cyanide with violence, it converts it. That's true alchemy, not resistance, but reimagining. The poison becomes a passage. Your body also carries scavengers, like glutathione, a small tripeptide that moves through your cells, offering electrons to reactive molecules. When oxidative stress rises, glutathione is there, sacrificing itself to preserve cellular calm. It is consumed in the process and must be replenished, but while it lasts, it guards you quietly. Without it, every cell would burn too fast. Even your blood has its own defenders. In cases of heavy metal poisoning, chelating agents can be given, molecules that clasp toxic ions like open hands curling around knives, neutralizing their edge. These chelators are synthetic mimics of what the body does instinctively. Proteins like metallothioneins and ferritin do this naturally, hiding away iron, copper, and other metals until needed, or until danger passes. But not all antidotes are physical. Some are behavioral, experiential, sensory. After grief, the antidote may be touch. After fear, it may be voice. After trauma, time. The brain rewires around damage, but also around healing. Neuroplasticity, like the liver's enzymes, doesn't just respond to harm. It adapts. It finds new paths. It lays new roads. It forgives. This is alchemy too. And in your sleep, your body begins this work. The parasympathetic nervous system takes hold, rest and digest, slowing the heart, deepening breath, sending blood toward the gut, toward the brain, toward repair. Melatonin, released in the dark, isn't only a sleep signal, it is an antioxidant, sweeping up free radicals. Growth hormone is released in pulses during deep sleep, prompting the rebuilding of tissues. DNA repair enzymes become more active. Memories are sifted and sorted. Emotional toxins are processed through dreams. This is why sleep feels restorative, not just because you rest, but because you repair. Chocolate itself, even with its stimulating theobromine, carries some antidotal properties. Its flavonoids reduce inflammation. Its magnesium calms the nervous system. Its phenylethylamine, though short-lived, nudges dopamine gently upward. Its bitterness, balanced with sweetness, teaches your body tolerance. The very act of moderation becomes its own antidote. You think of the alchemists of old, not charlatans, but seekers, who understood that healing was not always about removing something, but transforming it. They believed the same fire that burned could also purify. That lead could become gold. That poison could become cure. And in your body, this is truer than they ever knew. Take the venom of snakes, once a weapon, now the source of medicines to lower blood pressure. Take digitalis from the foxglove plant, lethal in excess, but life-saving in the right dose, strengthening the heart's beat. Even botulinum toxin, one of the deadliest poisons known, is used in medicine to relax muscles, to quiet tremors, to ease pain. In each case, danger becomes design. Alchemy becomes science. Poison becomes possibility. This is the great truth, whispered through every cell. Nothing is only one thing. No molecule is fixed in its meaning. No effect is permanent. Your body is not only a place where things happen. It is a place where things are interpreted, reshaped, redeemed. You roll slightly in bed, the sheet brushing your skin, and even that contact is chemistry. Touch releases oxytocin, a hormone that lowers cortisol, reduces pain, invites calm. It is not a drug, but it acts like one. It is your body's answer to fear, to separation, to cold. It is an antidote written in the language of closeness. And in this moment you realize antidotes are everywhere. In the sunlight that tells your skin to make vitamin D. In the scent of lavender that slows the breath. In the bitter taste that reminds you to be cautious. In the memory that teaches you what once hurt. In the stillness that lets the noise fall away. In the knowledge that healing is not a moment, it is a process. You don't need to fight every toxin. You need only to listen, to adjust, to counterbalance, to bring in what steadies you. That is the deeper chemistry. That is the alchemy. And as you near the end of the night, your mind drifts gently back to the molecules you've met. Carbon's four arms, oxygen's spark, theobramine's soft alertness, cyanide's interruption, mitochondria's flame, enzymes as choices, bitterness warning, plant's defense, and the threshold where dose divides help from harm. They've all passed through you. They've all taught you. But there is one last step to take, one final molecule to hold, one final question to whisper into the stillness. How can such small things, atoms, bonds, tastes, carry so much meaning? How can molecules become memories? How does chemistry become comfort? To answer that, you must return to the beginning, to the very molecules that make up meaning itself, to the shapes that hold memory, language, and presence. You return now to the breathless hush between questions, to the moment just before waking, when the air is still warm with dreams and the body floats, half here, half away. In that liminal space, you feel it, not as sound, not as thought, but as a gentle inner recognition, something deeper than language, more intimate than memory. You begin to see that even your softest feelings are not separate from the chemistry within you. They are its reflection, its rhythm, its scent in the air, meaning you realize is not abstract. It is built, quite literally, of molecules. The idea of love, that feeling when your eyes close in someone's presence and your chest loosens without effort. That is oxytocin and dopamine, serotonin and endorphins. Yes, but not just as names in a chart. They are messengers sculpting your perception, directing your focus, enhancing the weight of a touch or the color of a glance. The chemical becomes emotional, and the emotional returns to shape the chemical. A feedback loop, soft and holy. Even sadness has a molecule. Not a poison, not a flaw, but a signal. A shift in serotonin's tide, a reshuffling of receptors, a slowing of norepinephrine, a withdrawal of light. And yet within this biochemical storm, meaning arises, stories, symbols, memory. Your mind wraps molecules in metaphor. You say, my heart is heavy, though the weight is not in your chest. You say, I feel hollow, though no cavity appears on any scan. The chemistry lives in your body, but the meaning lives in how you feel it, name it, carry it. You're a story written in molecules. Take memory, for instance. The ability to recall this very moment, the warmth of your blanket, the echo of the word theobromine, the steady way the darkness hums, is possible because proteins folded in just the right way to strengthen synapses in your hippocampus. Your neurons, whispering across gaps, fire in concert and repetition, lays down paths like footprints in sand. Long-term potentiation, scientists call it. But what is it truly, if not remembering? And what is remembering, if not the chemical preservation of meaning? Your thoughts, the very stream in which this story flows, are patterns of electricity guided by chemistry. Glutamate excites, GABA calms, dopamine marks significance, acetylcholine tunes your attention. But these are not just signals, they are decisions your brain makes about what matters, what stays, what forms the shape of you. Even your words, this shared language through which we meet, are built upon chemistry. The tone in your voice, the rhythm of your breath, the softness behind yes, the bite behind no, they all arise from vibrations and muscle movement. Yes, but behind those are neurons firing in temporal lobes, Broca's area, Wernicke's region. The mechanics of speech, governed by neurochemistry. And behind those, something even deeper, the need to connect, to transfer meaning, to be heard. What a miracle it is then that chocolate, bitterness, poison and safety, such tangible things, can somehow lead you here, to a reflection not on the outer world, but the inner one. That chemistry, the study of bonds and atoms and structures, is not cold at all, but tender, personal, close. You see now that chemistry is not just what surrounds you, it's what you are. Each choice your body makes, from the curl of your toes in a warm bed to the slowing of your breath in the hush of night, is a molecular story. When you sigh, it is not only air leaving the lungs, it is carbon dioxide, rising from your blood, balancing your pH, calming your mind. When you close your eyes, melatonin deepens, and with it, your body begins to knit the day into memory. Everything you felt, wonder, safety, curiosity, is translated into structure. Your skin, your blood, your bones, your thoughts, every fiber, every flicker is chemistry, but never just chemistry. Because from that chemistry comes meaning, and from meaning comes a kind of peace. You lie there now, wrapped not just in sheets, but in molecules that know you, that respond, adjust, evolve. Your cells do not ask who you are, they simply keep you whole. And so the journey that began with the question of chocolate and cyanide, of pleasure and danger, ends not in division but in unity. There is no battle between delight and doom. There is a dance, a dose, a rhythm that you've learned to follow and perhaps to trust. And just as your thoughts begin to drift, as sleep reaches for you again with quieter hands, you find one last truth settling softly into place. That everything that makes you human, every laugh, every scar, every sensation, every dream, is written in chemistry, and still somehow surpasses it. You're more than your molecules. And yet, without them,